So I told myself to try to post weekly videos because I can't expect to get any subscribers by doing absolutely nothing. But I was struggling to come up with ideas for a hot second because oh my god, content creation is actually hard. But then at the last second, a thought crept into my mind. I should redraw something to see how much I've improved since I felt like shit about seeming stagnant in my art journey. And then I thought, oh my god, wait. I had an old comic I made years ago that I can totally redraw a page from. And that's how we got here. Obviously, I should tell you all the story of how this comic came to be to give context. So, I was young, okay? Really young for someone who was on the internet, much less posting a comic. Possibly why there were a lot of questionable things with this comic. I used to be really into BTS, and I bet everybody is probably thinking right now,
uh-oh, red flag.
I still like K-pop, deal with it. I don't listen to BTS as much anymore. Please don't cancel me. My young self really liked mermaids and BTS, so what did she do? Create a BTS fanfiction that was a mermaid AU, and boom. Somehow it blew up overnight, and as of recording this, it's at 90,000 views. Honestly, some insane stuff considering I was so young, but I definitely appreciate all of the support it got, even if this is something I kind of look back and cringe at now. Onto the speed paint. So, I'm setting up my document. Out of all the pages I decided to draw, I went with page 36, or one of the parts in episode 5 of the webtoon. I made both a webtoon and tapest format because I was absolutely insane back then. I chose page 36 because it had a lot of dialogue I could redo, and I could draw the main characters in this. Which, in case it isn't obvious, it's Jungkook and Taehyung. Oh my god. I'm kind of embarrassed to even say this, but I can't hide my past. And also, this is a redraw of a page and not an entire redo. If it was up to me, I think I'd redo the entire thing and make completely new characters. I sound so scornful of my old comic, but I really am kinda embarrassed looking back at it. But if people liked it back then maybe I shouldn't be so harsh. Okay, so I should probably explain what I'm doing. So earlier I was doing like rough sketches to sort of lay out the composition. Normally I don't do this for my art, but comics are an exception because it is basically a lot of mini drawings at once. You can see me adding in the text bubbles before starting on the clean sketch, and this is just so I can see how much space the bubbles actually take up when I add text in. Something I noticed that was off in my old comic page was the text size was not consistent. I'd shrink down the text to make everything fit in a word bubble, which just made my comic look tacky. So we're keeping the font size consistent all throughout this redraw. There was so much dialogue though, and I didn't like that my old self didn't split it up into smaller dialogue chunks. But I did my best to squeeze everything into this one page. It was tough, but I kind of made it work. Now another thing is the style of the speech bubbles. Again, it just looked tacky in my comic because I used this outline pen because I didn't want to bother actually drawing the speech bubbles. So here I actually drew them so that it fits into my art style. I think with just changing the text bubbles alone, it already looks so much better. I'm sure you can all see me doing the clean sketches next. I can't really say much about the improvements made though. Style-wise, yeah, it's a completely different style. My art was not the same as it was 4 years ago. I tried to keep what I was doing similar to the old comic page because, again, this is a redraw. Though I changed some parts, such as having a few more angles and then adding an extra panel at the end so I can split up that last dialogue. It was a long ramble and there was no way I could fit it into one panel, so yeah. It still looks a little cramped though, but we kind of do whatever we can. I do want to point out though that I did my best not to modify the character designs too much, even though I desperately wanted to. However, I did have to change Taehyung's design very slightly though. It's pretty subtle, but you'll notice that I made the spines on his back more sharp and straight. So I'll put up his reference sheet I made for the comic that I don't think I ever posted just so you can compare. He was supposed to be a merman based off of a lionfish, but I did not execute it well at all, especially with the spines on the back. Back then, I knew something was off, but I didn't know what it was. Now looking back, it was the spines. They're not floppy like that, and also the colors aren't blended into a gradient. So yeah, I pulled up an actual picture of a lionfish and fixed things. Small tangent there, but thought I'd point it out. The clean sketch went by somewhat quickly, and part of it was because I didn't let myself get way too distracted. But I'm not about to go on about my problems with mindlessly scrolling for videos to play in the background. Part of the reason why the clean sketch went by so fast was because the background was so simple for this. This page takes place in Taehyung's room, and yeah, There isn't much in it, though I wish I could have put in more detail or something. When making this comic at first, I did not put a lot of thought into the backgrounds, which was a big mistake. Things were kind of plain, so even if the characters are the main focus, the fact that the backgrounds were plain kind of just threw everything off in my opinion. But well, I just made do with it in this redraw. It's really not any better though, but I hope that it doesn't look as bad. Okay, so I don't think there's much else I can talk about when it comes to improvements on the line art as well, because just like with my clean sketch, my art style kind of just changed. So obviously the improvements are self-explanatory. I just got better at drawing since 4 years ago. So instead, I thought that maybe I should share a couple of things I learned while making this comic. It ran for less than a year and things came crashing down when I had to take a break due to this trip. I think if I continued making this comic, I actually would be done with the entire story by now. Like this year, I would have just finished it. Now, on the comic's actual page, I did post an update that I think details why I stopped working on this comic, but I'll also say it here too in case people are too lazy to read. I got burnt out. Like, once I stopped doing it due to the trip, I kinda just had no motivation altogether and disappeared. I burnt out so fast due to working on the script and drawing at the same time mostly. I'd be drawing the comic, but then I'd have to quickly rush back to the script and write it further. So it took so much energy out of me. Not to mention school was back in session, so I really had to juggle everything at once. So what's the lesson here? Please, for the love of God, make sure you have your script done, or at least a plan so you don't get burnt out with coming up with good plot points while simultaneously drawing. You don't need to have everything planned out to a T, but seriously, don't be like me. Even though I look back at this comic and cringe at myself, I can't help but feel a bit frustrated that I was so underprepared. Seriously, making a webcomic is no joke and I should have taken more time with planning. But I think I only took a month or two to properly plan, which was clearly not enough time. But oh well, mistakes happen, and I was young and dumb. So you'll see that I'm finishing up the line art, and obviously after line art is flat colors. I actually changed up the colors used slightly. Still kept the same vibes, I guess, but I just used different swatches. Like, for example, I made Jungkook's hair slightly lighter in this because I made it so ridiculously dark in the original page. Like, we know he has black hair in this, I did not need to make it so dark. I also changed a couple of skin tones because I felt as if maybe I made them like too pale. If these were just my muses, it probably wouldn't matter as much. But just because I was making a fan fiction, yeah, skin color kind of matters still anyways. Though even then, I still think that maybe Jungkook is a little pale in this. I was still somewhat trying to match whatever the hell I did in my old comic. Now looking back at the comic, I think everyone was like pretty pale, which isn't exactly good. But I had no idea what I was doing when I was younger. Best believe if I were to attempt anything like this now, I'd be better. Okay, so you're probably seeing me color the background first. Yeah, I don't have much to say about the background once again. People might think I'm weird for this, but I like to shade the background first before dealing with the characters. Why, you may ask? Because I hate backgrounds. So I want to get whatever is not so fun out of the way first before working on the fun stuff. Normally I kind of slack off on the backgrounds and scribble stuff on. Then after doing the bare minimum shading, I'd blur out the background. I didn't blur out any backgrounds in my comic for whatever reason, but I think eventually I would have out of pure laziness. I'd probably claim it was depth. I'm trying not to do that with any future comics though, because backgrounds are inevitable. You have to draw them. Obviously my background game in this redraw was still slacking, but compared to 4 years ago, I'd say I'm much better. Of course, if I had done some more planning and maybe did some concept art for the backgrounds, they wouldn't look so bad. But the excitement to start the comic got the better of me, so that's why I started so quickly. It's better to take your time with your ideas rather than rush in to start, because you're 100% going to hate your idea if you rush in unprepared. Trust me. Ugh. But I'm going on another tangent again. So we're at the final stage of this, which is shading and then eventually rendering. Nothing new to talk about when it comes to shading, just my new art style, guys. But I can probably talk a lot more about rendering though. As we saw in my old comic, I still did my lighting and rendering effects. I think that's remained consistent in my art style and all throughout the years. Though here in my redraw, I think it's the cherry on top of the rest of my art. Like, it just adds so much and kind of makes it look better. Obviously, all the rendering is a bit overkill for a comic. People recommend simplifying your art style for your webcomic, but I don't think I can bring myself to do it. So yeah, we're always going to try to get my full art style, rendering and all, with the comic. Even though it adds so much more time, I think it is worth it. But yeah, we're nearing the end of the speed paint and I'll show you guys the final product. So here's the final product. I think it's a huge improvement from the page I made 4 years ago. And here's a side-by-side comparison so you guys can see the improvement for yourself. Thank you so much for watching my video, and I hope to see you in the next one.